Hello and welcome to our viewers in Nigeria and around the world. I am Amarachi Ubani. Diplomatic Channel this week takes on two big topics on the continent. The issue of the ceasefire agreement between the Nigerian military and the Boko Haram sect, which seems to have broken down. In the last 1 week, we've had reports of attacks in towns in Adamawa, Borno and in Gombe states. Prior to that, there had been attacks in Mubi village in Adamawa shortly after the ceasefire was announced. Of that ceasefire, when it was announced, raised the hopes of many, and that's because the release of the girls abducted from the government girls' secondary school in Chibok was part of the deal. In fact, at the last security meeting that we knew of that held in Saudi Arabia, the girls had been expected to have been released the following week. I'm sure you've already seen the video online posted by Boko Haram in which one of its members, claiming to be the leader of the group, disputed the agreement, asking who it was made with. He did go on to say that some of the girls have been married off and all of them have converted to Islam. Former Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi, who's my first guest this week, discusses the best approach to bringing the girls back home, as well as the sincerity behind the ceasefire agreement. The Nigerian military, however, says its renewed pressure on the terrorists in Borno and Adamawa states will drive them out. Military spokesperson Major General Chris Olukolade says there has been more intense shelling in areas where they are said to be hiding.
The behavior of insurgents and their sponsors, okay? And what makes us even more complex is that we do not actually know who is really in charge. If they were not involved in the negotiations, they would have denied immediately. That it took them 3 weeks is a clear indication that there's some disagreement within the group itself. And if you listen to what that guy said yesterday, it was incoherent. I think from the federal government side, I think there was some genuine sincerity. I think that more because in comparison, the federal government is more under pressure to release, to end the war and to get the girls released than the people on the other side. So I sincerely believe that there was some negotiations going on. I believe that there was some level of sincerity among those who were talking. But then we have to be very clear to ask the question that those who were talking to the federal government, do they have the full power to negotiate or to make any deal? In crises like this, oftentimes you find that this is what really happens. I know that a number of people might be disappointed that the negotiations broke down, but people need to remember, when you look at the history of such negotiations, that it takes very long time. Remember that during the Liberian-Sierra Leone War, for example, we negotiated 19 times, had 19 agreements with Taylor, none worked. With the Fode Sankoh group, similar thing, none worked until we were able to pin him down. In fact, in the case of Fode Sankoh, recall that after he had signed an agreement with in Ivory Coast, he left the capital city, got to the airport, repudiated the agreement, and came to Nigeria, where he was arrested. And that set the stage that Nigeria managed it and eventually were able to make peace. So this is the nature of what happens in negotiations like this. And when we actually did the Sierra Leonean peace talk also, it took us 1 good month sitting in Togo, talking with the various factions before we could get them together. So for me, there's nothing really strange, but I think there was some sincerity along the line.
It's interesting because this deal was supposed to bring some assurance to Nigerians. Hearing it, they were supposed to be assured that at least some people's lives would be saved up north. But you think the military should have kept quiet about this until probably they had started, the execution of the ceasefire?
In a way, I think they were, but you wouldn't blame them. Maybe they did that based on the level of assurance that was given to them by those that they are talking to. Now, let me make this very clear again, as I was saying before, that cast your mind back to a place like Colombia. Some people were held in Colombia for long, long years, up to 11 years. Even negotiations the rebels, and they will promise, but they will not release them. I think the mistake that has been made in our own case was that from beginning we gave we probably did not understand the nature and the dynamic of this crisis, and we gave the impression that it's something that could be resolved overnight. But the truth of the matter is that crisis like this runs its own full circle, and until you get to that circle, we are probably not likely to achieve, because in our own case, you really do not know who the leadership, the real genuine leadership is. I refuse to believe, for example, that the character I saw in the video yesterday is the leader of the group. There are some people somewhere that are manipulating the whole thing, which of course is why, as I was saying before we came on, that if Shakaru and co were not negotiating, or nobody was negotiating with the federal government would not have that confidence to have announced that there's a ceasefire in the making. It was based on that confidence that was given to them, or to the federal government negotiators, that they came and made that announcement. And the fact that the rebels or the insurgents, Boko Haram, did not deny it for 3 weeks also indicates very clearly, in my mind, that there is some crisis within the group, whether to make a deal or not to make a deal. I think at the end of the day, the more powerful group said no deal, and that's why we saw that video yesterday.
I have to ask at this point, do you believe that Abubakar Shekau is dead or alive?
The gentleman yesterday, I think he had a hood over his face, so it's not very clear for us to know. But it's not impossible that he could have been shot, that he's dead, long gone, and so on. But that's not the issue, really. Because once one insurgent leader dies, there are people ready to take over. Once there is crack in the system between them, others take over.
You know why I asked this question?
Yes.
Even Boko Haram has denied that Shekau was shot. They have denied. Even during the security meetings, they did deny that Abubakar Shekau was shot.
Now look, whether he's dead or alive, for me, it's not the real issue, really. They've made it clear they are not prepared and they are not ready for peace yet. And given the activities, what we need to do in this country is mobilize for war and deal with the situation until they are badly beaten and driven back. This war is not just going to end in the next couple of months. Again, I make the point that this crisis will go its full cycle, and my best prediction is that it will end after next year's election.
You have a very interesting analysis there, but was there any reason for Boko Haram to have violated this ceasefire if the Nigerian military was willing? Why? I mean, because the federal government had already agreed, yes, they were going to release some Boko Haram members. They'd agreed to their own terms of the deal. So why would they violate the agreement in the first place?
It tells you very clearly that this is a bigger picture than we've been looking at it. It tells you that there is a hidden agenda, a bigger agenda that we probably have not focused very clearly. And it just shows you that there are factions in Boko Haram and that they are not yet ready to make a deal because it does not suit them yet to make a deal. They probably do not think that they have achieved what they want to achieve, and so they want to continue. Look, bear in mind that this crisis, I don't know whether people look at it the way I look at it. We've had various phases. Remember, they started with the military. When they saw they were not getting whether enough publicity or sympathy or whatever, or it was not making the kind of impact they wanted to make, they turned to begin to bomb churches, more like Catholic churches. Why did they turn to that? To create a religious war, drag everybody into it. When that failed, they started bombing various motor parks. Look at the motor parks that were bombed. They were very specific. They targeted specific motor parks. Again, they wanted to create a tribal crisis. Again, that has failed. So they have not finished with their objectives. So for me, Nigerians need to settle down that this is not a short-term crisis. It's a long-term crisis, and we've got to take a long view, strengthen the military, and really go out to crush this until they are ready to make peace. He said it very clearly. that they want war, they are more comfortable in war, that they are happy when they get their guns and the rest of that. That's not the kind of guy you treat with a kid's glove.
But do you think it's possible that they have sponsors from Chad,
absolutely.
Niger, and so on? Because they do have camps in each of these countries.
I don't know where the sponsors are from, but every insurgency like this has sponsors. They have sponsors, they have financiers, they have those who direct operations and those who plan the strategies. They have. I mean, there's no doubt. What we need to find out, what we need to do really, this country, find out who these people are. Maybe the government does know some of them and they're talking to them. If you take it that this is a bigger issue, bigger crisis than what we've been looking at. If the intention when it escalated after the 2011 election was actually to bring down the Jonathan administration, it has failed. If it was to create that impression that, look, somebody, some people or some other region would have to take over the presidency, it has not worked. So come 2015, depending on the outcome of the election, that will determine how long this Boko Haram thing will last.
The Chibok schoolgirls, do you think they will ever be released?
I think eventually they will be released. Maybe not, maybe not all. So we need to be hopeful. But what we need to settle down and realize, particularly those who are saying federal government should go and get the girls released, two things are involved, or the questions we should ask ourselves. Do we want the girls back in coffins, or do we want the girls back alive? If we want them back alive, we got to be patient and negotiate, or find a way to negotiate and appeal to these people. Because anytime you decide to go and rescue them, definitely there'll be casualties. Are we prepared to accept that a few of those girls should die for others to be released? I think that's the dilemma that the federal government, I believe, faces. If I was in Jonathan's shoes, that's the question I'll be asking myself every day. You remember the Israelis tried to do something like that not too long ago? They lost the chap at the end of the day. So what was the essence of launching an attack? At the time they launched the attack, the gentleman was alive. But by the end of the whole operation, they found him dead. So we have to convince ourselves, what do we want? Do we want the girls dead and we hand over the coffin to their parents, or we want them alive? For me, as a father, I honestly want my